It's 9:03 in the morning. Alex is sitting at the kitchen table, laptop open, coffee going cold beside the keyboard. The shirt is the same one from the office. The posture is the same one from 6 months of 9 o'clock mornings. There is no meeting on the calendar. There is no calendar, really, not anymore. 3 weeks ago, Alex was a content strategist at a mid-sized tech company. Then came the email. Then came the phrase everyone's hearing in some form this year: restructuring around AI capabilities. Then came the severance, the LinkedIn post, the well-meaning text from old coworkers. And then came this. Sitting down at 9 a.m., opening the laptop, waiting for something to start. Alex knows there's no job to log into. Alex isn't confused about that. This isn't denial. Alex could tell you exactly how many days it's been, exactly what the severance package covered, exactly what the market looks like right now for content strategists. Alex knows all of it. So why is the laptop open? This video isn't about how many jobs AI is going to take. You've probably already seen 10 videos with that headline this year, stacked with charts and percentages and warnings about which industries are next. This isn't going to be another one of those. This also isn't a list of which jobs are safe and which ones aren't. Because if you're watching this hoping for a tidy answer to that question, the honest truth is nobody actually has one yet, and anyone who tells you otherwise is selling something. And this isn't a video about which skills you need to learn to become AI-proof. You've heard that advice already. It's not wrong exactly. It's just incomplete, because it assumes the thing being threatened is your resume. It isn't. Not entirely. What's happening to people like Alex right now has very little to do with a skills gap. It has almost nothing to do with intelligence or effort or how good they were at their job. What's happening is something quieter and stranger, and if you look closely, something that isn't really about employment at all. It's about what a job was secretly doing for a person, long before anyone thought to ask. And the reason Alex is still opening that laptop at 9 a.m. isn't weakness. It's a psychological mechanism with a name. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what that mechanism is, and exactly why just get a new job is the least useful advice anyone could give right now. Let's start with the numbers because they're real and they're not going away just because this video is about something underneath them. Software developers between the ages of 22 and 25 have seen employment drop by roughly 20% compared to where it was at the end of 2022. Not a projection. Not a could happen by 2030. A measured decline, already here, tracked by researchers at Stanford working with payroll data across millions of workers. In the first quarter of this year alone, tech companies announced well over 100,000 layoffs, and close to half of those were explicitly attributed to AI in the company's own public statements. So take Maya, 24, 2 years out of a computer science degree, junior developer at a mid-sized fintech startup. Good reviews. Nothing wrong with her work. Her team just got smaller. The tickets she used to spend a week on, a senior engineer now clears in an afternoon with an AI coding assistant sitting beside them. Nobody told Maya she was bad at her job. They told her the team didn't need as many people to do it anymore. Here's what almost nobody talks about. It wasn't just Maya's paycheck that disappeared. It was the Slack channel where her team joked around at 11 p.m. before a deadline. It was the sense that she was part of something building toward a launch date. It was the quiet background feeling of being useful to other people in a specific, nameable way. Psychologists have a name for this: the latent functions of work, a term from research going back decades, describing everything a job gives you that has nothing to do with the money. Time structure, social contact, a sense of purpose beyond yourself. None of that shows up on a severance check. All of it disappears the same week the job does. And here's the part that makes Maya's situation different from a normal bad luck layoff. If she'd been let go for budget reasons in a stable industry, she could tell herself a simple story. This company didn't work out, the next one will. But junior developer isn't just one company's team getting smaller right now. It's the whole category getting smaller at the same time everywhere she'd normally apply. There's no obvious next stop that isn't asking the same question every other listing is asking. Do we even need this role anymore? That's a different kind of uncertain than a normal job search, and it changes what rebuilding actually requires. Now, take David. 41. Worked in operations, the kind of role that got swept up when Block, the company run by Jack Dorsey, cut 4,000 jobs this past February. 40% of the workforce, gone in one announcement, with the company citing what it called intelligence tools. The stock went up over 20% that same week. But look closer, and the story gets messy, eh? Some economists who studied the move afterward pointed out that Block had been overhired for years, a pandemic-era hiring spree finally correcting itself, with AI doing the work of a headline more than an explanation. David doesn't know which version is true for his old job. He genuinely doesn't know if he was replaced by a system or replaced by a spreadsheet decision that used AI as convenient cover. And that uncertainty is its own kind of injury. Because here's what happens the moment someone loses a stable job. According to psychologists who study exactly this, your identity as employed, which you never had to think about, which just sat quietly in the background of how you saw yourself, suddenly becomes visible. And in becoming visible, it flips. You start to feel yourself being sorted into a different category. Not David who works in operations, just unemployed. An outsider looking in on a group he used to belong to without ever noticing he belonged. That sorting is not just uncomfortable. Research tracking people over years has found that a period of unemployment can leave a mark on life satisfaction that lingers long after a person finds new work. This isn't a mood. It's a documented, lasting effect. But here's the third story, and it matters just as much as the first two. Take Priya, 36, laid off from a marketing role 5 months ago, also cited as AI-driven restructuring. For the first 6 weeks, her days look like Alex's from the start of this video. Laptop open at 9, nowhere to be, no reason to be there. But somewhere around week 7, Priya did something specific. She didn't wait until she had a new job to rebuild her days. She built a structure without one. A 9 a.m. walk with a former coworker who'd also been laid off. A Tuesday afternoon where she taught a free workshop at the library, something that gave her the exact feeling of being useful to other people that her job used to give her, just aimed somewhere else. She didn't fix her unemployment. She fixed the thing underneath it. That distinction is the whole video. And we're about to explain exactly why it works. So let's name what's actually going on here, because it matters before we go further. This was never really a story about jobs disappearing. It's a story about what a job was quietly doing for a person, the structure, the community, the sense of mattering to someone, and what happens in the gap once that's gone before anything replaces it. If this is landing for you, hit subscribe, because we're about to get into exactly what fills that gap and why some people fill it faster than others. And if you felt any version of what Alex, Maya, David, or Priya are feeling, drop a word in the comments. You're not the only one sitting with this right now. Before we go further, let's be honest about something, because this video will lose credibility fast if it isn't. The fear driving all of this is not irrational. AI has been cited as a factor in roughly 1 out of every 8 layoffs so far this year, up from less than 1 in 100 just 2 years ago. That's not a fringe statistic. That's a real, measured shift. And if you're feeling nervous about your own job right now, you are responding to something that is actually happening, not something you imagined. But, and this matters just as much, not every layoff wearing an AI label is actually an AI layoff. Even the people building these systems have said so publicly. The CEO of OpenAI has pointed out that companies are blaming AI for cuts they would have made anyway. Analysts at Deutsche Bank warned that this year will be defined by what they called AI redundancy washing, dressing up ordinary cost-cutting in futuristic language, because we're adopting AI sounds a lot better to investors than we overhired for 3 years, and now we're fixing it. Researchers at Yale's Budget Lab looked at the broader labor market earlier this year and found something surprising. The overall rate of occupational change hasn't actually accelerated enough yet to signal a massive structural wave of AI displacement. Unemployment duration for workers in AI-exposed jobs hasn't shifted either. Not yet anyway. So which is it? Is AI quietly gutting the labor market, Or is AI mostly a convenient story companies are telling? Here's the uncomfortable answer. It's both, depending on where you're standing. And if you're the person actually holding the severance letter, the distinction barely matters. Whether the system that ended your job was genuinely artificial intelligence or a spreadsheet dressed up in AI language, the psychological experience on your end is identical. You still open your laptop at 9 a.m. with nowhere to send your attention. There's a term for the deeper condition underneath all of this, coined back in 2011 by an economist named Guy Standing. He called it the Precariat, a blend of precarious and proletariat. Most people who use the term focus on the unstable part, temp contracts, gig work, no benefits. But Standing's actual point was sharper than that. He said the defining feature of the precariat isn't unstable income. It's that people in it have no secure occupational identity, no story about their working life that they can hand to themselves and say, "This is who I am." That's the piece nobody's talking about with AI layoffs. We keep asking how many jobs AI will take. We almost never ask what happens to a person's sense of self when the category they used to belong to, developer, strategist, operations manager, stops being a stable place to stand. You can survive losing income. Losing the story you tell yourself about who you are is a different kind of loss entirely. And here's where it gets stranger than a normal layoff. In a typical downturn, you lose your job, but the category still exists. There are still other retail managers, other assembly line workers, other travel agents. The identity survives even when your specific job doesn't. What's different about the AI wave is that, for some people, the category itself is what's shrinking. Maya isn't just unemployed. She's watching junior developer become a smaller category everywhere at once. There's no reassuring sense of I'll just find the same role somewhere else, because the role itself is being redefined industry-wide at the same time for everyone in it. That's the specific flavor of precariousness this generation of layoffs produces. Not just I lost my job, something closer to the thing I used to be doesn't quite exist in the same shape anymore, and I don't know what to call myself instead. Watch what that does to a person over time. It doesn't usually show up as a dramatic breakdown. It shows up smaller than that. Picture a dinner party. Nothing dramatic, just people standing around a kitchen island with drinks, the kind of small talk that happens before anyone sits down to eat. Someone turns to you and asks the question everyone asks. So what do you do? 6 months ago, that question took no thought at all. Now there's a half-second pause before you answer, a flicker of deciding which version of the truth to give, the old title that doesn't quite apply anymore, or the honest, messy answer that takes longer to explain than anyone at a dinner party actually wants. That half-second pause is the whole thing. It's not dramatic. It's not a breakdown. It's just a small, private moment of not having an easy answer to a question you used to answer without thinking. This is not a character flaw. This is not a failure to adapt fast enough. This is what happens psychologically when the ground a person built an identity on shifts faster than identity itself can shift with it. So let's go back to Alex. 9:03 a.m. Laptop open. No job to log into. By now you understand exactly what's happening in that kitchen, even if Alex doesn't have a language for it yet. This is a psychologist named Marie Jahoda's research, going back to a small Austrian village in the 1930s, where she studied a community that had lost nearly all of its factory jobs at once. What she found became one of the most quietly influential ideas in the psychology of work. She said a job does two things. It pays you. That's the obvious part, the manifest function. But underneath that, doing work no one thinks about until it's gone, a job also provides 5 things she called latent functions. A structure to your day, regular contact with other people, a sense of collective purpose, of being part of something, a form of status, and a rhythm of activity that gives your hours shape. None of those 5 things show up on a paycheck. All 5 of them evaporate the same day the paycheck does. That's why Alex is opening the laptop at 9 a.m. It was never really about the laptop or the imaginary meeting or any specific task. It's the body and the mind reaching automatically for a structure that used to be there, the way you'd reach for a light switch in a room you'd lived in for years, even after the wiring's been torn out. Jahoda put it almost exactly this way when she described what happens to people after job loss. They don't experience their new free time as leisure. They lose their sense of time itself. They lose a kind of self-respect that was never about the money to begin with. And there's something else happening underneath that, something closer to a threat response than simple sadness. Researchers who study identity have found that when your job feels secure, your sense of yourself as an employed person barely registers. It's just quietly there in the background, doing its work without needing your attention. But the moment that security disappears, that identity becomes visible for the first time, and in becoming visible, it flips. You start to feel yourself being resorted out of the group you used to belong to and into a new one you never applied to join. That resorting isn't just uncomfortable. It behaves, psychologically, the way a threat to something you value behaves. Your system treats it as urgent, even if there's no physical danger anywhere in the room. This is why just get a new job. The advice everyone gives, the advice that's technically true and completely useless in the moment, misses the actual injury. It treats the wound as financial when the wound is structural. It's like telling someone who just lost their sense of smell to just cook something that tastes good. The instruction isn't wrong. It's aimed at the wrong system. Which brings us back to Priya from earlier, the one who around week 7 stopped waiting for a job offer to rebuild her days. Look at what she actually did, because it maps onto Jahoda's 5 latent functions almost perfectly, and she never read a single page of the research. The 9 a.m. walk with a former coworker, that's time structure and social contact, rebuilt on purpose. The Tuesday workshop at the library, that's collective purpose and a form of status, redirected somewhere new. She didn't wait for a job title to hand these things back to her. She went and got them herself, in a shape that didn't require anyone's approval. That's the actual answer buried under all of this. Not learn to code faster than the machine can. Not network harder. The recovery that actually works starts before the new job, not after it, because the thing that's broken isn't your resume. It's the 5 invisible things a job was quietly doing for you that nobody ever taught you to notice, let alone rebuild on your own. Alex doesn't know any of this yet. Alex is still just sitting there, laptop open, 9:03 a.m., waiting for something to start. But somewhere in the next few weeks, Alex is going to figure out what Priya figured out, that the job is gone, but the 5 things underneath it don't have to be. They just have to be rebuilt somewhere else, on purpose, by someone who finally understands what was actually lost. So here's what actually matters underneath everything we just walked through. First, what you lose in a layoff like this was never just income. It's time structure, social contact, a sense of collective purpose, status, and rhythm. 5 things a job was doing for you quietly in the background that nobody ever taught you to name, let alone rebuild on your own. Second, being part of what people are starting to call the AI Precariat is not a verdict on your ability. It's not a comment on your talent, your effort, or your worth. It's a structural condition, a category shrinking industry-wide, all at once for reasons that have very little to do with whether you were good at your job. You were. That was never the question. Third, and this is the one that actually changes what you do on a Tuesday morning. Recovery doesn't start when you get a new job. It starts the moment you decide to rebuild those 5 things yourself, on purpose, before anyone hands you a title that makes it official. Priya didn't wait. That was the whole difference. So here's the question worth sitting with, and worth answering in the comments if you got an answer. If you stripped away your job title tomorrow, what would still be true about who you are? Not what you'd put on a resume, what would actually still be there? Alex is going to figure that out eventually. Maybe today, maybe next month. The laptop will stay open a little longer, and that's all right, because now you know exactly what that open laptop actually means. It's not denial. It's not weakness. It's just a person quietly reaching for something that used to hold their day together in the seconds before they realize they're allowed to go build it themselves.